This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
This is Lynchburg Equestrian, and you're listening to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that watched us win the national championship. Thank you very much.
Yes, this is your host, Auburn Elvis. As you probably figured out, our welcome intro this time for this episode was done by the wonderful ladies of Lynchburg Equestrian after they clinched another national championship. So 3 in a row for them. Pretty amazing. So yeah, they were very excited. I was able to pull them aside and get them all to record that welcome message. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. So for this episode, basically to make it easier on myself so I could get this episode out the door quicker, I recorded different segments at the end of every day. Now, the sound quality is going to be a little suspect. Also, my voice, I've noticed in re-listening to it, I sound really tired in some of these. So, that's what you get when you're on the road like that. But yeah, so that's what you're going to hear. Also, I had to re-record the very final piece just because the place I set up in the venue, it just was not great. So I'm going to re-record that, and so you're getting that one well after the fact, but it's still the same day, still day 3. So here we go. First off is day 0 and just what it's like for Auburn Elvis to go to the World Equestrian Center for the National Championship Tournament. So we're on day 0. I am down here in Ocala and about to turn in for the night, but I'm going to do this first one here and sort of catch everybody up on the situation. So the way things are going here on day 0, I think they do something where they take the horses out and everybody looks at them or something. They scout the horses or something. You technical people would actually know what that's called. There was a name like evaluation or something. It looked like the girls were doing homework, but they were actually doing something with the sport. Anyway, so what I did was I drove into town early this morning. I basically drove a little over halfway last night, stayed in a little dirty little hotel, down near Adele, Georgia, and then came in this morning because this morning I was going to have an interview with Zach Blackerby over at the Auburn Daily. Needed to get here pretty early, so I came in and immediately went over to the World Equestrian Center. I suited up, set up my stuff, and it was really nice because you could see the horses and the warm-ups and the stuff going on behind me. And then I did the web call with him and did the interview, and it was really cool. So did that, closed that out right as a bunch of the riders were starting to fill into the chairs and stuff, the seating. So they kind of pushed me out of the way. That's cool because I was done anyway. So I got done, went and I changed back into my alter ego, and then I drove over to the store. Went to Walmart because I needed flowers and I needed some food and dishes. The reason I needed that is because I drive back to the World Equestrian Center and I go to, and if you've ever seen the place, the main feature of this campus is how right when you drive in, right in front of the main hotel is an outdoor equestrian ring, and it's got these long pavilions, these open air long pavilions on either side, and they're just open. You can just walk in and sit down and watch what's going on. And there was some sort of show going on, some Western show. And so what I typically like to do when I come down here is I will set up at one of the tables and do a video promo for the next day as if it were the next day. Basically, I'll be saying, hey, we're about to start with Auburn and Oklahoma State. Here's who we think are favored, blah, 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 blah. But of course, it's not tomorrow, but y'all don't know. So I record the video today, so that way I get it out of the way, and then I'll lay in the graphics later. So I'm doing that. Well, and the reason I needed flowers is because, of course, Auburn Elvis isn't just going to sit at a table like you peasants do. Instead, I want to dress it up. I want it to look like a dang country club level finery. So, I bring props and stuff, and one of those was a vase, and so I had to have flowers for the vase because, of course, And so I set it up really nice, and then I go and I had to record several takes because the camera was not cooperating, and then it got windy, so I had to dub over some of it. So if you see the video, that's why it looks a little weird, is because I ended up saying, well, forget it, I'll just dub this later. I'll fix it in post. Anyway, so once I did that, then what do? Oh, I change back into my civilian clothes, drive over to my hotel, which is now, we're in the early afternoon, so I can actually check into my hotel. So I check into my hotel. It's a nice place. I'm at the Days Inn. Not super fancy, but there's a tub in the main suite area out here. So, yeah. Anyway, y'all don't care about that, or if you do, you're a weirdo. But that's all right. I care about it, so I guess I'm a weirdo too. So after recuperating from that, doing some of the video stuff, getting the voiceover stuff working, then it's about time to go to the darn opening ceremonies. So go to the opening ceremonies. They got the videos going. And man, let me tell you, okay, for you Auburn folks who are just listening to this because you're Auburn fans and you're not really horse people, you probably have gone to other sports playoff type things. Maybe you've gone to an Auburn soccer game that was a playoff game, or maybe you've gone to a baseball regional, whatever, or maybe you've gone to a football game, bowl game, whatever, or basketball game, something like that. There's a certain strict formality to all those sports that does not exist here in equestrian. Everything is just sort of blended together. It's also mostly free. You just walk right on in. Like even if you were at a playoff game, like a soccer game where you normally don't pay to go to an Auburn soccer game, but if it's a playoff game, you do have to pay. Here, you don't pay. You just walk in, and it's great. And plus, it's not segmented so that, because again, if you go to an Auburn playoff soccer game at Auburn or any place, the only fans there are either Auburn fans or the opponent. Okay, that's it. Well, here at Equestrian, everybody's here. Okay, so all 12 teams, so the 8 dual discipline teams and the 4 single discipline teams. In fact, I saw 3 people wearing UT Martin outfits. Not like riders, but like old people like me, fans or something, somehow associated with UT Martin. And I got to tell you, UT Martin's not part of this tournament. They didn't make it this year. They almost did, but they didn't. Yeah, they got people here. That's crazy. It's awesome. So what I'm saying is, you get to talk to everybody. You see TCU fans and Oklahoma State fans and South Carolina, everybody. It's great. It's not just 2 fan bases. I love it. Plus, there's an after party or a kickoff party after the opening ceremonies. And everybody walks over to it. And there's a band going. And there's a bar. I think it's an open bar. I don't drink, so I don't know. But even if it's a cash bar, hey, it's there. I mean, a lot of these things you can't drink at when you go to these playoff games. They don't want you drinking at a Auburn soccer game. Well, here, yeah, go ahead, get lit. Yeah. If you ever are in the area at one of these national championship tournaments, you really need to go to one because it's cool. Very laid back, very cool. Everybody's having a good time. So yeah, it goes on into the night. Suddenly all the riders disappear because they got curfew, so they all disappear. But their parents hang out. Some of them have had a little too much to drink, and that's hilarious. I love it because, man, if they have any kind of problems with the sport or things like that, you will find it out at this party. It's wonderful. I love it. I'm not bashing anybody. I think it's great that people have opinions, and I certainly do. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. You don't run into that. I mean, okay, sure. Drinking, you'll find that everywhere. But the fact that you get to do it with all the other fan bases is really cool. And with the people who are high up in the sport. Just everybody I saw and locked eyes with, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go over and talk to that person. I did. And then lots of people, just came up and talked to me. Yeah, and, if you ever see me out at one of these meets or something, don't be bashful about asking me for a photo because, frankly, I wear an Elvis costume. I'm cool with people taking my picture. Don't be embarrassed, okay? Nobody's looking at you anyway. They're looking at me. So, yeah, come over and ask for a photo. I love it. Your parents, yeah. The UC Davis people, oh, so nice. I really, really am happy that they made it here. I mean, I would have been happy with whoever from the ECA made it because there was going to be one of those 3 teams. It was either going to be UC Davis or UT Martin. Well, and 3 of them showed up anyway. Can't keep them away. Or Delaware State. None of those 3 teams have ever made it here before. So this was going to be a big deal for some of them, for one of them. And it was a big deal for UC Davis. And so their fans and their moms and dads and whatnots and grandparents are here. And they're so excited. And you could just tell they are so excited to be here. Now, it's going to be rough tomorrow when they have to face TCU. But, they might could beat them. But anyway, we'll see how it all goes. So yeah, that's kind of day 0. That's what I've been doing. That's y'all have been doing y'all's thing. And yeah, all right. So I'm going to sign off now, and I'll do one of these for every day. Thank you very much. All right, let's do a recap of day number 1. And I just want to tell you as an aside, day number 1 is not as good as day 0. Okay, day 0 is perfect. Okay, nobody loses day 0. But it's possible to lose day number 1. So anyway, let's look at semifinal number 1 between UC Davis and TCU. So in the matchups, it looked like UC Davis was going to be pretty good in the jumping seat. And of course, TCU would clean up in the Western. So the real key was, hey, if the Aggies could get it done on the jumping seat, they were still in it. Okay? Well, didn't go that way. In fences, that went 4-0 for TCU. Yeah, that right there, start panicking, Aggies fans. And now in the flat, that went 3-2 for UC Davis, but the damage was done because, of course, horsemanship, very hard to get any points away from them. They didn't. That went 4-0 for TCU as well. And then in reining, that went 4-1 for TCU. So that produced a final score of TCU 14, UC Davis 4. This was not as close as the stats suggested. Basically, the difference was just, TCU on the jumping seat. When they won that with fences and all, that they basically won the whole day right there, because that took away the only chance that UC Davis had. So, yeah, if TCU keeps performing like that in the jumping seat, boy, there may be a championship in their future. We'll see. All right, semifinal number 2 between Texas A&M and Georgia. The stats favored Georgia just a tiny bit. Again, it didn't quite go that way. Fences, Georgia is really good in fences, but man, you wouldn't have known that from today. Fences went 4-1 for Texas A&M. So yeah, now on the flat, Georgia is, I think, the best flat team in the nation. So they did win that 4-1. So that sort of evened things out there. And then of course, you've got the Western where it's kind of hit or miss. Horsemanship went 3-2 for Texas A&M, and then reining went 3-0. So yeah, if you only get 2 points in a single discipline, like they did in the Western, really tough to beat a good team. They did not beat a good team. So that ended up being Texas A&M 11, Georgia 7. So yeah, that happens sometimes. On we go to semifinal number 3. Now this was the Auburn semifinal. All right, so the way this one looked going into it, Auburn's good in fences and horsemanship, and they're kind of up and down in flat and reining. Sometimes good, sometimes not good. With Oklahoma State, they're really good in flat, and they're pretty good in reining, and they're pretty good in fences too, but not as good as Auburn. And so fences started out, and sure enough, Auburn won that 4-1. All right, so everything's going according to plan, according to Auburn's plan. Well, over in reining, that went 4-1 for Oklahoma State. Okay, that's not the end of the world because, again, that's not one of Auburn's best events. So it would have been nice to get some points out of that, more points, but there's still 2 other events, and one of them Auburn's really good at, number 2 in the nation. So, no need to panic there. So yeah, it's 5-5 at the half. Over we go to the flat. All right, so on the flat, again, Oklahoma State's a little bit better than Auburn. That one ended up 2-2. So this was actually pretty good for Auburn, okay, to go 2-2 there. Took away something that was kind of a strength for Oklahoma State. So all they had to do at this point for Auburn was just bring it home on horsemanship. Well, horsemanship went 3-1 for Oklahoma State. Huge upset there. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Again, Auburn's the number 2 horsemanship squad. I think Oklahoma State's like 5th or 6th. So yeah, you really wouldn't expect an upset of that magnitude, and that's what determined the whole meet. I mean, Auburn did everything they needed to do in fences. Could have done better in flat, but I'm sure Oklahoma State feels that way too. Reining, that didn't go great for Auburn, but it was all right because horsemanship was going to bail them out. It did not bail them out. So Auburn's eliminated. Oklahoma State's going to go on to the next round. And then our final semifinal of the day, quarterfinal, is SMU and South Carolina. Okay, so the stats really liked SMU here, but South Carolina put up a fight. Okay, so on fences, South Carolina won that 3-2. All right. And this is not the order that they happened in. I think maybe fences went first, but, looking at it, I can't tell which one. Oh, you know what? Yes, I can. Okay, so fences had to have gone first, and then one of the Western rides happened, and that was 4-1 for SMU. So that was only a 1-point difference in the, or maybe a 2-point difference at the half. Okay, so over we go to the second half. In the flat, SMU wins that 3-2, and then they win the other, whichever Western event wasn't in the first half. They won that one 4-1. They won both Western events 4-1 is what I'm trying to tell you. So that made the final score SMU 13, South Carolina 7. So, you know what? This was closer than I think the stats thought it would be. So good job, Gamecocks. You kept it close. Now SMU will now go on to the next round, to the semifinals, and they won't face Auburn. They will face Oklahoma State, and the other one, the first one, is going to be TCU and Texas A&M. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Also, in the afternoon, we're going to have the single discipline semifinals. I don't have a lot of notes here, so that's why I'm stuttering a little bit. And, yeah, that's number 1 Lynchburg against Sewanee. And then number 2, Sweetbriar going up against Dartmouth. So that'll be kind of neat. So yeah, on a personal note, it's not great when the team that you're down here covering gets eliminated in the first round. There's all the awkward stares of, are you still hanging around? Yes, I'm still hanging around because guess what? I took off from work. This is a vacation for me, so I ain't going back. Also I got the hotel. It's already paid for. So, hey. But I tell you, once Auburn loses in one of these tournaments, every day is casual day. So I'll be dressing down a little bit, but I'll still do the matchup graphics beforehand because, I got lots of free time because I don't have to write articles anymore. I wrote the final article, had a really nice sort of farewell video there about just the end of the season. And yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. But, we're not the only ones who lost. Half the teams lose every day, so that's just kind of how it goes. Well, that's all for day number 1. Not as good as day number 0, but, oh well. But that's it. So we'll check in with you tomorrow on day number 2. Thank you very much. Okay, day 2. All right, so it's only been a few seconds for you guys, but it's been almost a day for me. All right, I'm going to handle the single discipline first because my thoughts on the dual discipline are going to take a little bit. So let's go ahead and the good folks over at Sweetbriar, Sewanee, Dartmouth, and Lynchburg don't need to be held up by my ramblings. So let's talk about us. All right, let's see. What do we got? Lynchburg and Sewanee. Okay, these two have had a little. The last time they faced, it was a little close. Today, it was not close. Now, I actually spoke to Lynchburg's coach, and I said, man, yeah, you're going up against them. And at first, I was thinking it was Bridgewater they had a problem with. He's like, no, it was Sewanee. He's like, but that was just an off day for everybody, us and them. It was really weird. And he's like, and he really didn't seem like he expected the same close meet between these two teams. And that dude was right, because it was not close at all. Lynchburg swept both events. Won 10-0. So yeah, they're going on. That's what you would expect, I guess, from the number 1 team, is to have their best performances here when it matters most. So yeah, for Sewanee, this is their second trip to the tournament. They get bounced early, but they were the 4 seed. So yeah, I will say that, a result like this also makes me really wish that Sacred Heart could have had a chance to play Sewanee in the season, so that we could have gotten a really good indication of who was better between those two teams, because I think they were vying for that 4th spot. Sacred Heart kind of got bumped down to 5th because, their schedule really wasn't as well laid out for them to have success, because they played the teams at the top of the single discipline sport. So they played Lynchburg and Sweetbriar and then lost. And I think they may have played Dartmouth too. I don't have the record in front of me. And then they didn't play the teams. They may have played Bridgewater, because everybody rode against Bridgewater, but they didn't ride against Sewanee, and that really would have helped us. But again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Sewanee, because everybody can have a bad performance on any given day. They certainly didn't have a great one, so I guess what I'm just saying is it would have been interesting if that was Sacred Heart, and I wonder if Sacred Heart would have done the same thing. And maybe they would have. You never know. Anyway, on we go. Sweetbriar, Dartmouth. Now, if you recall, the one loss that Sweetbriar had up until the conference tournament was to Dartmouth. Now, that was at Dartmouth. Could Dartmouth do it at a neutral site? Well, almost, but not quite. Let's see. Fences went 3-2 for Sweetbriar, and the flat went also 3-2 for Sweetbriar. So both of them went 3-2. I don't have my notes typed out. I'm just basically winging it. But still, that's close. A couple of mistakes, and that would have flipped the result. Actually, one mistake would have made it a tie, and then who knows if maybe Dartmouth could have won the tiebreaker. Although, let's see, looking at these numbers, I don't think they would have. But anyway, this is what you get when I don't have notes. I ramble a little bit. So let's first say, good job for Dartmouth. This was their first time at the tournament. I sat with some of the Dartmouth folks at one point. I did, but then I got up and moved to get some water and sat with some other people. But anyway, they seemed like really nice people. They were very enthusiastic about the whole thing, and that's exactly what you want at the national championship. I also kind of sat near the Sweetbriar people, who are always enthusiastic and always glad to be here, and they always are here. Well, here's why. It's because they're good. They're one of the top two programs. They have been ever since the single discipline division got invented, and so here we are again for another showdown between Lynchburg and Sweetbriar. So we'll see how it goes. Again, I'll tell you that in the preview I kind of favored Lynchburg, but you never know. Again, this was close between Sweetbriar and Dartmouth. One ride would have made it a tie if it had gone the other way. We may be in that situation tomorrow. We'll see. All right, so now let's talk about the dual discipline teams. All right, both semifinals finished with the same score, 11-9. SMU, Oklahoma State. Now, in the graphics that I prepare before these meets, the matchup graphics, let me tell you, this one didn't seem that close in those. It seemed like SMU matched up really well. Well, Oklahoma State, they rode really well against Auburn, and they continued that. They've been the hottest team, them and Auburn, and they were hotter than Auburn. So, yeah, it follows that they would then challenge SMU, and they did. They took them to the wire. So, let's see. Fences went 3-2 for Oklahoma State. Flat went 4-1 for SMU. Horsemanship went 3-2 for Oklahoma State, which again we see another good horsemanship performance out of the Cowgirls. And then what do we got here at the end? Reining went 3-2 for SMU. So if one of those rides had gone another way, it would have made it a tie, and then tiebreaker. Who knows what would have happened? So good job both those teams. For the Cowgirls, they were kind of playing with house money after that Auburn win. To take SMU down to the wire like this is pretty good. So of course they would have liked to have beaten SMU, but then everybody wants to win, so you can't have everybody happy. I will say that the Cowgirls have a Big 12 tournament, and frankly, this Big 12 tournament title is probably more prestigious to them than any of the other recent ones they've gotten, because they had to come from behind they were the underdogs, and they had to beat a really good TCU squad to get that trophy, and they did. So even though they lost here in the second round, I think they have no reason to be ashamed or frustrated. I mean, this is it's a tournament. Everybody should be facing good opponents. Nobody gets an easy route. So there you go. SMU. Oklahoma State and Auburn both looked hot because of their tournaments. SMU's independent. They're not in a conference. So we never got the chance to see them, breeze through a conference tournament. Well, you know what? They're good anyway. This proves, hey, there's something going on over there, and it's all good for them. So they will advance to the finals for the second year in a row, maybe 3 years. How long have they been in this finals? They've been in there a lot. Anyway, I know that COVID year that I went, nobody was allowed to go, and I snuck in. They were in the finals, but they didn't win it. But their program has been at the top for a while now. They might be the new Auburn, everybody. Good job for you. I mean, frankly, just calling you the new Auburn, I can't say anything better than that. So I will move on to the next semifinal. Texas A&M TCU. All right, so like I said, this one finished up 11-9. In the stats, much like the other semifinal, it did not look like this was going to be close. It was close. Fences went 3-2 for Texas A&M. Flat went 3-2 for TCU. Horsemanship went 3-2 for TCU, and this is actually in the stats. I had this going down as a 5-0 sweep. So getting 2 points right there. Good job for the Aggies. And then in reining, that ended up 3-2 for TCU. So let's talk about how this one ended. All right, I wasn't there. In fact, here's how my day went, okay? I got up, I went over to the reining stuff, and I watched the Western stuff at the very beginning of the semifinal. Okay, so I watched most all of everybody's first event there. So that's what I watched. And then when that was over, I went back over to the jumping seat ring, and I watched the end of Flat. Yeah, that's what was ending up. So then with that ending, there was still time to go catch the end of Horsemanship. I elected not to do that because I wanted to just stay where I was. And here, I'm going to jump off on a tangent. Tell you what, remember this point. I will come back to this tangent that I want to go off on. I'll do that later. But basically, I did not want to walk a half mile to go see just the tail end of the Western so that I could turn right around and come back and watch single discipline stuff. So I elected to just hang out there and watch the single discipline stuff. And the induction of the honorees, which started late. And you know why it started late? Because there was a big old controversy going on at the end of Texas A&M and TCU. I didn't know about that because, again, they're not going to ruin their award ceremony by saying, sorry, but the reason we're late is because we had a whole bunch of people arguing over mistakes that were made. Okay, so what happened? My day, so basically I didn't see anything going on over there. It ended in controversy, and then I didn't know about it, so I just watched, the horse riding that was in front of me over at the single discipline stuff. And then when that was over, I go back to my hotel and I take a nap. Don't really check my phone, and a bunch of people were messaging me about, hey, what are your thoughts on what happened? And, oh, did you see what happened? And, I also ate dinner. And then I checked my phone because I want to see how popular I am on Instagram and all that good stuff. And a lot of pending messages. And people are asking me about, well, what happened? What do you think would happen? Wow, I would love to hear your takes, Auburn Elvis. Okay, so I didn't know anything, all of this. Here's what happened. As it was explained to me. I guess it was horsemanship because that was the last one, I believe, of the day. There was a horse that was provided by another school, South Carolina, and this horse, you're only supposed to use certain types of spurs with it, okay? The rider from TCU wore the wrong kind of spurs, okay? So that's an equipment violation. Technically, that rider should be disqualified for riding with the wrong equipment, okay? That was not caught, apparently, before the ride. And from what it was explained to me, it's a little unclear as to whose responsibility it is. And that was what a lot of the arguing was over. So that rider ended up winning the point. And the Texas A&M rider did not receive the point. Although, if the technicality were properly judged, and when I say properly, I mean, if the girl had been disqualified for using the wrong equipment, that would have given the point to Texas A&M, and that would have tied the meet up. And they would have possibly won that on a tiebreaker. Well, that didn't happen. Instead, what happened was a lot of discussion over whose responsibility was it that the wrong spurs were worn. Was it the responsibility of the rider because she did use the wrong equipment, or is it the responsibility of the team providing the horse to make sure that the equipment gets used, and even in the rules they're supposed to provide the right equipment, and so there was an argument made that that the correct equipment was not provided by the people who should have, and therefore they shouldn't be penalized because they weren't given the opportunity to use the proper equipment. So in the end, I think the way they settled it was they said, well, we're going to leave the scores as they are, and that's not great for Texas A&M, but there you go. So that would result in the point going to TCU and Texas A&M losing 9-11. So that's, from what I understand, those are the actual facts that people don't really dispute. They just aren't kind of thrilled with the judgments that were made on those. So now let's talk about what is my take. Well, all right, I'm not a horse person, so I can't really tell you I don't know the severity of this technicality, but I do remember that in the SEC tournament, Texas A&M, and boy, this can't sit well with them. Texas A&M had a rider disqualified on the flat because she entered the darn ring before the yellow sign went up that says, "Hey, we're ready for you." And that's a technicality. You're not supposed to do that. Now, everything about her ride was fine, from what I understand, but she got disqualified and got a 0. And they had to live with that. Now, it ended up, Auburn beat them by so much that it didn't matter, but it started the day off in a way that I'm sure they didn't want to start. And so I could see Texas A&M having gone through that, where a technicality was applied against them that cost them a 0, that, for it not to be applied here in the national championship, not that same technicality, but a different one, they're being a little victimized. And I think most people would say, yeah, they didn't do anything wrong here. And the more I think about it, yeah, if it had ended up in a tie, that 0 that Texas or TCU would have gotten would have almost guaranteed they would have lost the tiebreaker. So yeah, very, very tricky situation. I can also see how TCU has a decent argument to say, yeah, this should have been caught by the person or the people in charge of the horse or whatever the rule book says. And again, I don't know exactly what the rule books outlines on this, but I can see some merit to the argument of, well, if we weren't given the opportunity to use the proper equipment, can we truly be penalized for it? There's also, I don't know enough about the sport, but how important are the proper spurs in the scoring? How much difference does it make? I don't know. But the rule's there for a reason. There must be a good reason. So, and I can certainly see even South Carolina's thing. Maybe they were like, hey, we did our best. This should have been caught by other people, not us, or whatever. I don't know. So there are no winners here. There are only degrees of losing. Now I'm sure the Aggies fans will say, "Oh, there's definitely a winner here, and it wasn't us." Apparently, true. Yes, you have every right to feel that way. Okay, so here's my overall take, and this is the philosophical take. And we should point out that the girl did get the higher score, so it would be nice to follow the higher scores and give deference to that. But again, if you use the wrong equipment, I don't know. It's crazy. All right, here's my take, and I'm going to step back and be philosophical on this, so I hope you'll indulge me. I have said in the past many times, the whole reason we do college sports is because they provide a laboratory for students and the people around the students in the greater community to learn life lessons in sort of a laboratory, okay? And I believe that's very consistent with the liberal arts perspective. That's why we offer another pathway that isn't just trade shows where you're only learning about the things you're going to need in a career. In liberal arts, we're trying to expose you to lots of different things, lots of different experiences. And with sports, other than them just being fun and all that, there's a real practical benefit to having sports in the college system. And we've sort of gotten away from that because they are such a high dollar entertainment, certain sports are, that we've lost a little bit of the appreciation of what they can truly benefit these athletes and these students. And that is, again, it's a laboratory for your later life. Because I'll tell you, as important as this national championship is right now, it's not nearly as important as the rest of your life, okay? Once you get out into the, we'll quote, real world, you're going to face so many things in your life that are way more important than whether the right spurs got used over here and that cost this team a chance to advance in a tournament, okay? Now, it sucks that mistakes were made because that's another part of the laboratory is, hey, let's not make mistakes in these things. And, hopefully the people in charge of this, who had the responsibility of the proper spurs being used, maybe that's the life lesson they get to learn about here. Things are important. One of the things that I think kind of goes on behind the scenes is with these national championships, nobody wanted to host it while it was down here at Ocala, and so Auburn had to host it every time, but there was sort of an agreement that other schools were going to step in and host it, but that never happened, and so Auburn has been doing it, and is that going to continue to be a problem where people aren't stepping in and taking over these logistics and helping out roles? I don't know. Maybe we should be learning something from that. Because again, if that rule's in place to ensure the safety and benefit of the horse, does that say that we maybe dropped the ball there? Was the horse a little less taken care of than it should have been? I think that's a decent question that people need to ask in the off season. I don't think the horse was necessarily. Nobody really feels that the horse was endangered, but again, that rule's in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that ball got dropped, if nothing else. Not even talking about competition. But for the two teams directly involved, I'll say for Texas A&M, again, you guys got hit with a technicality in the SEC title, and it cost y'all a point. And then y'all turn around here in the national championship tournament, and there's a technicality, an infraction that apparently was not applied from your perspective. And so it does seem like you're the victims of a double standard. And so here's what I'll tell you that you can potentially take away from this in this little laboratory that's going on. And I'll get a little bit personal here. In my personal identity, my secret identity, I have struggled in my life with anger issues. Now, I know I don't seem like that when I wear the costume, and that's on purpose, because when I wear the costume, I make it a conscious decision to try to be happy and upbeat, even though, I might get jeered at a baseball game or a football game or whatever, because, I attract attention wearing that costume, and I know that. So I know that, okay, I got to be happy. I got to always put my best foot forward, not get angry or anything like that. But in my private life, I will sometimes get very angry. And I have learned over the years that the trigger for me that makes me angry is when I am forced to make a sacrifice for somebody else in a situation when I don't think I should have to make the sacrifice, like somebody else should be the one sacrificing, or it's just I wasn't even given any clue. It's just wake up in this morning and, hey, you got to make this sacrifice. That drives me nuts when that situation. Nobody likes it, but apparently for me, I really don't like it. And it has taken me a while to learn that and to kind of realize that, you know what? There are going to be times in life when you have to make a sacrifice and you don't get a say in it. You are forced to do it. And it is not fun, but it happens. It is a part of life. And so my hope is for the Texas A&M folks that as painful as this is, you will try to learn a life lesson that, you know what, we were forced to make a sacrifice that we probably shouldn't have been forced to do, but we had to. And hopefully that will help you out later in life in things that are a lot more important than an imaginary tournament about, which team is the best in the nation at doing these specific things. Okay? If you learn that lesson, you're going to get something more valuable than what you're going to get out of a trophy and a bunch of people cheering at you on Saturday. For TCU, what can y'all take away from this? I'll say I'm a youngest child, and let me tell you, as a youngest child, our lives are just easier, okay? Youngest children, it's easier. And sometimes we get the benefit of things that we shouldn't, or we avoid the consequences of some bad decisions. It just happens for us youngest children. And I'm going to tell you, TCU, in this little laboratory, you guys are the youngest child in this little scenario. Y'all did some things that maybe you weren't supposed to, but you avoided the consequences from it, and that happens. You know what? That happens. So maybe the takeaway for you guys is to say, well, let's have some reflection over what does that do to other people. I mean, yeah, I'm going to benefit, and I've now got to live with the fact that maybe I benefited when I shouldn't have. Yeah, that's rough. But again, sports is a laboratory, and you guys have that lesson that y'all can take away from this. And if you take away something valuable from that, it's going to be more valuable than the fact that you guys get a chance to go and ride against SMU tomorrow and possibly win a national championship. So, all right, that's that. Now, what was that tangent that I got off on that I said, hey, put a pin in this? The World Equestrian Center has one Achilles heel, and I bet all of you know what it is. Anybody who's been here. It is the fact that the Western Ring is too darn far away from the jump and seat rings. Okay? And I've talked about this in the past, last year or whatnot, as to why that, from what I've been told, why that came to be. But I've now, after going through this 3 years in a row, I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't want to go through this anymore. Okay. If we are given a choice to have a different venue that is not as nice, maybe the hotels aren't as nice, maybe the layout isn't as pretty and green, maybe the weather isn't as nice as it is down here, I'm willing to take on those drawbacks if I can go to the gosh dang events that I want to go to, okay? Because here at the World Equestrian Center, I am not able to see all of the horse riding that I want to see because it is placed too far apart, okay? And I end up missing things I want to see, not because of any choice I made. Again, this is me having to make a turn sacrifice. But we got to learn something from this, all right? And what we need to learn from this is either the World Equestrian Center needs to make some facility changes to accommodate us, or we got to move this tournament, okay? It is not fair to the fans to make them choose. You can only see this, half of what your team does. People are spending a lot of money, making a lot of accommodations in their lives to come down to this tournament. And for you to then basically say, okay, you will only get to see half of a tournament because we placed the venues half of a mile away from each other. That's wrong. You just shouldn't do that to people. And it's taken me 3 years to basically become very firm in my belief that that's wrong, and I'm there now, okay? And I would say that if it moves away, which the rumblings I've heard is that it probably will, I'm on board with that. And I will step off into the unknown. I don't know what the next place will be, but as long as the venues are close to one another, it's better than here. And I love this place. This place is so freaking awesome, except for the fact that the arenas are so far apart. And to me, that's a deal breaker. We just can't keep doing that. So, all right. So yeah, day 2. This part is not as happy as the other parts. Maybe tomorrow will be happier. Oh goodness. But yeah, you know what? That's what you get sometimes. And this is the only college equestrian podcast that will get real with you. So hope everybody is enjoying themselves. I'm certainly enjoying myself, even with all the weird stuff that happens. I still am glad I came down here. This is fun, y'all. This is a vacation for me. All right. So signing off on day 2. We'll see what day 3 is like. Thank you very much. All right. Well, it's, what are we, day 3 now, championship day. So we just had the single discipline championship has wrapped up, and Lynchburg has won another national championship. This time they were the number 1 seed, and they got it done. Basically, in the stats leading up to this, it looked like it was going to be a 5-5 contest, with basically in fences, Sweetbriar was favored 3-2. And on the flat, Lynchburg was favored 3-2. Well, fences went off first, and there was a tie, a no-point tie there, and so that kind of took a point away from Sweetbriar. So things were tied up at 2-2 going into the flat, and that really meant things were an advantage for Lynchburg because they're a little bit better on the flat. And sure enough, they ended up winning that. What was it? I don't have the stats in front of me. It was something to something, but it was a higher number to a bigger number. Anyway, so it ended up with Lynchburg winning. But still close meet. A couple of rides really swung it one way or the other, and that's what you get when you have 2 really good teams. So yeah, basically this was really cool. So yeah, and y'all probably heard I just got the Lynchburg ladies to record the welcome intro, so that was pretty cool. They're very excited. People are crying. It's really, really cool. So very interesting for Lynchburg to basically have to go, the whole season as the defending champs again, and then at the end they end up being seeded number 1, so everybody's gunning for them. But boy, they looked really good yesterday with that 10-0 victory over Swanee, and then today they kept it going and beat a really good Sweetbriar team. So yeah, all right, well, that's all for the single discipline. The dual discipline is going on over at the Western Ring. I looked at that and I don't know. I'll tell you about it here in a little bit, but yeah, that's how things are going so far on championship day. Thank you very much. Okay, day 3, championship day, dual discipline. This is part 2 of day 3. All right, so we already talked about the single discipline. Now let's talk about SMU versus TCU. This is number 1 versus number 2. So the day started out over in the Western Ring. They did both Western events. That's sort of an accommodation they've made the last couple of years just to make sure that people can see all of the the finals because, again, there are problems with the World Equestrian Center spreading everything out too much, and they need to fix that. I've heard rumors that it's going to be at the World Equestrian Center for the next 3 years, which, again, if they keep spreading things out like this, I'm against it being at the World Equestrian Center. All right, I will come out and say that it should not be at the World Equestrian Center if they're going to continue to make people walk a half mile between venues. It's just it's not set up for what we need. So we need to they need to change how they put us, maybe put a jumping seat ring out there, arena next to it, or do something. But it can't go on like this. This is just, it's going to get worse and worse every year. People are going to be like, why do they keep doing it? Because they're building all kinds of new stuff out there. How is it that, and everything that they're building, our situation never improves? Again, and making all the Western go first and then all of the jumping seat is not an improvement. It slows everything down. Plus, if you're a team that maybe isn't as good on the Western side, you show up and you're in the hole right from the beginning. That's strategically not, it's not how any meet is out, during the regular season and not during the conference tournaments, but somehow we do that at the national championship, and we do it to make an accommodation for the venue. Okay, why does the venue get the say over that? Why don't we choose a venue that works for us? Anyway, all right. I don't like that part of the World Equestrian Center. I like everything else, but having to walk so far is just wrong. They shouldn't do that to us, and they need to fix it. Okay, so the meet, let's see, Reining went first. That went 4-1 for SMU. So right out the gate, boom, the Mustangs have seized control. Then horsemanship's coming up. And again, like I've been telling you, TCU has the number one horsemanship squad in the nation. So this is where they're going to come back. Well, yeah, that was 2-2. All right, there's a tie. But, oh boy, I tell you, that horsemanship is the base of the pillar of strength for TCU. It is their USL, if you follow the Dune books or movie. And let me tell you, SMU just cut USL right out of the equation because they didn't even get a majority out of that. Or TCU didn't. It just was, yeah. If the day that TCU does not get a majority of horsemanship, that's the day they're going to lose. A little bit of foreshadowing for you. Okay, so on they go over to the jumping seat arena. Everybody walks a half mile over to the jumping seat arena. I'm not sure if you knew that it's a half mile, but in case you didn't, I'm just going to let you know. It's a darn half mile. So everybody gets back over there. Which one went first? It doesn't really matter because they're both 3-2 for SMU. So if you add all that up, SMU won the thing 12-7. Okay, so one of them went first, and it went 3-2. The other one went second, and it went 3-2. And by then, it was a foregone conclusion. Because again, TCU, their best events are not in the jumping seat; it's in the Western, and they got whooped. And when the best things you're best at don't deliver for you, just ask Auburn. It's not going to be a good day. Yeah. So, SMU, they did not have a conference tournament, so we weren't sure if they were the hottest team. We thought it might be Auburn. Turned out it wasn't Auburn. We thought it might be Oklahoma State. Turned out it was not Oklahoma State. It was SMU. Now, those were probably the three hottest teams, and it's funny, they were all on the same side of the bracket. But yeah, you know what? The Mustangs, they earned it, okay? They have got a little dynasty going on there. They've been in this final for what, like 3 of the last 4 times, and they have won it the last 2 times. So yeah, they are clicking on all cylinders over there. For TCU, not the result they wanted, but again, the thing they're best at, they didn't deliver on, and that pretty much sealed their fate. They didn't win any event. Hard to win the meet when you don't win any event. I mean, it's technically possible, but it's really not easy. So yeah, I mean, they're kind of fortunate that they only lost 7-12 when the horsemanship went the way it did. But still, great season for them nonetheless. I've talked to lots of TCU folks at this thing, and yeah, about 2-3 years ago, their whole program really took off. And that's great. So, if you're out there, if you've got a young program, or maybe you've got a program that's floundering, maybe, buy them a cup of coffee, the folks over at TCU, and quiz them about what they've been doing, because they're proud of what they're doing, so they're going to share it with you. They might not give you all their secrets, but they'll give you some broad things that you can maybe, try to read between the lines and see what's going on and see what you can apply at your place. But for right now, TCU's looking good, but SMU's looking better. So maybe buy them a cup of coffee too and go, bend their ear and see what, not bend their ear, but you know what I'm saying. Shake them down for some secrets. Figure out what's going on over there. All the SEC teams ought to be doing that because, time was every one of these during national championships was won by an SEC team. And now, here it is, SEC ain't won, for like 3 years ago. And that was Georgia. So, anyway. The whole tournament comes to an end. I had fun. I hope y'all had fun. I know some people ended on a bad note, and boy, I feel bad for y'all. With that controversy, again, I don't know all the details. I don't know all the rules. When you listen to this, I know a lot of the parents are going to be starting up their fingers and they're going to want to type a whole bunch of replies to me. If that makes you feel better, go ahead and send it to me. But I can tell you, I will admit, I don't know all these details, but I can tell you also, I'm not going to record another one of these podcasts that flesh out one or two little details. It's just not important. Okay. We need to move on. Take what you can out of what happened this weekend, good or bad, and just move forward. I mean, that's kind of the way things are anyway. I mean, that's why they had to make the decision that they did with TCU and Texas A&M, is that they couldn't just stop there and say, well, you know what? We won't finish this meet. It'll just be unfinished. No, they had to finish it. They had to move forward. And sometimes you have to make tough choices just to move the thing forward. So if you want to send me a bunch of comments about the rules that I do or do not know and how I messed up when I tried to illustrate or relay what the controversy was, okay, good. But I can tell you I ain't going to do another podcast about it. So if that's what you're hoping is going to happen, that ain't going to happen. So we got to live with it. So the season comes to an end. I got to tell you, this was a cool season, just because of how much parity and overall depth increased seemingly for everybody. I mean, we got an ECAC team in this tournament for like the first time ever, or maybe SMU back when they were in the ECAC. They were in it, but they got out of it because they felt it was too difficult to get into the darn tournament or to get seated properly based on that level. Well, that level is rising up because we saw the champion UC Davis get into the tournament over half of the Big 12. So yeah, good job to them. Good job to everybody. The whole sport is growing. Talked to Tom O'Mara about that, and how, we're at like 26 schools, I think, 25, 26, something like that. And we got to have 40 schools in order for this to be a full championship level sport. And right now, most of the growth is happening down at the single discipline level. So let's get more schools in this thing, let's get this going. So I think it's a good time for the sport. I think this was good. And, we'll see how it goes next season. I probably won't have a podcast until the late summer, early fall, when we're getting ready to do this again. I'll do a preview after all the new freshmen are in and the rosters are finalized on everybody's website. So that's how it'll go. Until then, I am your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and war horses.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.